Hello and welcome to Print Live. My name is Azan Javed and I am the Print's Srinagar correspondent. I have just traveled from the state, formerly actually a state, and to Delhi. So we are here today to talk about the situation in the in the valley specifically. There has been had been in fact a clampdown imposed since August 4, the night of August 4, and I'll be talking about how the situation was in the valley and specifically about how reporting in the valley has been, how journalists have been coping up with the communications blackout that existed in the state. So to take a stock of things right now, as we speak, the impositions have actually, the restrictions on civilian movement have been lifted. It happened on 19th of August. There was a 15-day lockdown wherein even restrictions were extremely curtailed. It was impossible to move without a pass, and in fact, even if you had a pass, what in common lingo we call the curfew pass, and the government calls it a movement pass, even that would not guarantee a safe passage. There have been multiple encounters. For journalists, I consider journalists a bit privileged because we are from the media and we would often negotiate with the officials at the barricade to move, to let us move. But for common people, it was extremely difficult to do that as well. Right now, the restrictions have been eased. Communications blackout has, there have been decisions taken by the government, basically lifting what they call a phase-wise step of lifting these restrictions on communications. So in the first phase, they opened up certain landlines, and now I think the last we checked, around 60% of landline they have are working in the valley. However, the landline connections are very erratic. They are not up all day. Actually, my own personal landline which I use is not working for the whole day, and I think I can safely say this for the other landlines that have been made operational. The thing that which we are right now in a sense witnessing is a shutdown like situation, which we actually reported earlier, given it the name of people's curfew, because or the civilian curfew, that is what the people there are at least calling it as. Initially, it was the government which had made the the restrictions, which had imposed the restrictions and imposed restrictions on traffic movement, as well as shops, schools, and everything, that every institution that exists in Kashmir. But after they lifted the imposition, there was some, in fact, kind of a spontaneous kind of a restriction that was imposed with the people on themselves, in a sense that all the all the shops you see, all the main education institutions, most of them in Srinagar that I'm talking about, and in South Kashmir as well as North Kashmir, they are as of now shut. And the situation has kind of reached a stalemate. A lot of people that we spoke to said that the situation is not normal, and that is where the main struggle actually is, that with the government wants what they want is to give a semblance of normalcy and project that things are getting better in the valley. And in fact, judging by the incident of protests, if you compare it with the previous unrests that took place, it is definitely very low to that. But what the people here say, that if things are completely normal as the government wants to project, then why isn't the communication the communication channels, why aren't they up? And this is basically caught both the state as well as the people there in kind of, they are in a stalemate right now, where they are saying that okay, if things are normal, you open up the communications, and if they're not, then the government obviously has to consider its own. It has its own reasons for not opening. In fact, the Governor Satyapal Malik, in his last press conference, called internet as a weapon, and he said that mostly Pakistanis and militants use internet more than Kashmiris actually, and he said that it can be used as a weapon to instigate the masses. So that is somewhere where the situation is, that by not opening the communications completely, the internet and mobile phones, they are continuously suspended. By not opening that, the government is not doing good to its argument that things are normal, and people there are also taking this as a kind of a signal, or maybe a kind of an indication that in fact things are not normal. So again, each Friday becomes every Friday that we've seen since the abrogation of Article 370 has proven to be a major test for the security forces, because it is the only day where people gather, and that is for the Friday prayers. And what government has said that they have stopped people from praying in the largest mosque, that is the Jama Masjid or the Dargah, where prayers are not being conducted since 4th August, but they're saying that local mosques are open. But even what we saw from the ground, that even the mosques which have a capacity of more than 2,000 people, they have also kind of imposed, what they do essentially is impose restrictions in the areas surrounding the medium-sized mosques, so that people do not gather in large numbers. And this exercise on every Friday is becoming kind of another reason for people to kind of be angry about. Now, the next, according to me, that is, the next challenge will be on the day of when there is Muharram. Actually, it is the period we are in the midst of Muharram, and there has been a ban on Muharram processions in Kashmir since the inception of insurgency. However, Shia protesters or Shia Muslims basically in Kashmir, they try to take out those processions each year, and there are clashes across the city because they are not allowed to. Now, it will be very interesting to see how the government, with this already a kind of a precedent when they do not allow the mourners to take out the procession, how will they handle them during this unrest? So we will also take some questions, and we'll see what our audience have in their mind, and what questions they think should be answered here. So our first question is by from Sayak Roy Chaudhary. His question is, why only Kashmiri residents, especially from Srinagar, have these problems? Why not similar reaction from Jammu and Ladakh? So obviously the Kashmir Valley right now has been in fact the most disturbed region of the state. There has been insurgency. Insurgency has been there in Jammu as well, especially in the Chenab Valley, Pir Panjal, and in fact there have been many incidents inside Jammu city as well. But Kashmir has been consistently disturbed since '89, and this is a priority. The region was a priority. Maintaining law and order in this region was a major priority for the state ever since the section was abrogated. Ladakh and Jammu, the belief among the security establishment was that they will be able to contain the protest if they take place. But with Kashmir, it is a bit tricky, because the protests, even the peaceful demonstrations, can turn into violent clashes depending on the reaction from the security forces, and that is where there is a threat of civilian killings, which kind of opens the floodgates of further protests. Add to this is the threat of militancy. It is right now most affected by the insurgency. The last time we had written about the total number of militants was 250. Right now we're getting reports that the number might have increased from that. So there is also this the angle of insurgency added with the local protests that take place, that makes it more difficult for security establishment and the administration to lift the curbs. But this is a reason which the government gives and in fact believes in. For the people, it becomes a bit difficult to digest it, because at the end it's their trade, their education, and everything that is suffering since August 4th. So that is what puts Kashmir in a more precarious situation than Ladakh and Jammu. So another question is from Hamkeen Moharman. What is the percentage of students attending the school? So that is a very interesting question, and to be honest, I don't have an answer to this, and neither does the government. At least I would like to say that all of the press conferences that we have attended so far, we have in fact repeatedly asked the administration, the representatives of administration who would brief us on this particular subject, the total percentage of students attending the schools, and they have not given a concrete answer. In fact, they have not given the percentages at all. They, however, have said or given out the total percentage of schools that have been opened. But from what we have reported, in fact, the second day of the school opening, the print had traveled across Srinagar in around 24, 25 schools, and we found out that none of them were operating. The larger schools, the mid-size, the small schools, they were all shut. So there is another question: what is the status of on-ground resistance as of now? Have the protests been died? Basically, the question, the gentleman is asked, or the user is asking if the protests have died down. I think the protests, in fact, have not. There was no kind of a time where actually they had erupted properly. There are stone pelting incidents happening in different areas. There are places where people are trying to take out demonstration, but it is kind of not, as I said, not as large as we saw in previous unrests. But there is always this threat of things kind of getting out of hand. So as of right now, situation largely in Kashmir is under what the government says under control. Um, we have Moshmi who was asking, the administration has been saying that situation is normalizing fast, but why are the political leaders still under house arrest? So yes, that is also a very interesting question. One, there are a lot of political leaders under house arrest, and there are also a lot of mainstream politicians who have been detained, and they are currently being housed in different sub jails. Hotels, guest houses have been converted into sub jails, and I think the main reason that honestly that we have been made to understand is that the government anticipates once these leaders are out, they might instigate the people. That is what this administration says, that they say that the statements issued by them before the abrogation of the state. In fact, a couple of senior government officials who I met, they said that statements of former Chief Minister and BJP, former ally of the Bharatiya Janata Party, Mehbooba Mufti, she had given quite strong statements towards the end, before 5th of August, I mean, and there the government reasons that that this might, once this curfew is lifted, they will be able to move out and meet their cadres or their supporters, and things might go out of hand. It is what they say, it is an emotional issue for the mainstream parties here, and they might make use of it. We have another question from Ramya, who says tourism industry must be badly hit. When are the hotels and operators expecting tourists to return? I think we are, to be honest, we have a very long way from that, because as of now, the entire tourism sector depends on the functioning of internet, whether be it bookings or checking out the places to visit and all. And because of the internet being down, all that is not happening. Secondly, there's another important aspect is that of perception, because everywhere across, because this issue has been internationalized a lot and was discussed widely during the last month. This has also kind of created a perception that Kashmir might not be safe to visit. And thirdly, I think the decision to call Amarnath Yatris and tourists back from Kashmir before the abrogation is also weighing on the minds of a lot of people. I'm not sure if the move has helped the perception of Kashmir being safe for tourists, because it was, after all, the government who called back all the tourists and the Yatris, and it might be a difficult choice for tourists to make before visiting Kashmir, especially now. Rohit asks, any estimates on the losses incurred by the hospitality industry due to the shutdown? Honestly, this too, because of the mobile networks and internet being down, and also the shutdown that now exists, most of these places where you could actually get this data are right now inaccessible. People are actually not coming on record to talk about these things. There is also a lot of apprehensions of kind of a reprisal. We are, as of now, due to the communications blackout that has existed so far, we've not been able to collect such important data so that we can produce it. But I'm sure once there is an easing of the restrictions on the communications, we might be able to give you concrete answers. Then again, Shrija Kulkarni asks, when will communications be restored? So I think what the administration has told us that they will, in the first phase, they will be making the landlines operational, but there is no word on mobiles and internet. When will they be operationalized? Honestly, internet, I think it will be a long time before they restore it. Mobile phones have been made operational in Kopwara, in Handwara, but from my understanding, it is not only because that the government wanted to restore this for communication's sake, but that area is actually, particularly Kopwara, is that most of the infiltration routes into Kashmir are in Kopwara, and I think it was important to maintain some kind of a intelligence hold on that area, which had actually suffered a lot after the communications blockout. Prashant, no army in the world can claim any moral superiority over the other, and human rights violations are a norm, not an exception. Why is it then that Indian media finds it difficult to raise causes of torture and atrocities committed by army personnel in Kashmir? I think for I can only speak on my own reporting and on behalf of my organization. I think we have reported all kinds of stories from Kashmir, be it the communications blackout or be it the restrictions. I think we have covered all the areas in Kashmir, and we have given equal space to all discourses and views that exist or as of now on Kashmir. Rohini asks, how feasible is the proposal of a GNK Investment Summit in the current environment? I think as of now, if you decide to hold a summit right now, it might not be feasible. That is why it's probably been delayed. There is talk that it might be delayed. But maybe once the communications are back up completely and the restrictions on civil movement are completely removed, maybe that might be the period where you can hold such summits. As of now, I think it depends on people to participate or not. I mean, I am from the region, so it might be a bit easy for me to say, but for people coming from outside Kashmir, it's definitely a very difficult choice to make, to visit the valley right now. Abhishek Toshniwal asks, what is the future of parties like NC and PDP going forward? So I think this is also a very important subject, the future of mainstream parties, basically the National Conference and the People's Democratic Party. So it is already their future actually is already under question, because what the people in the valley, whom we've been speaking to, they, in a sense, the fact that there were no major protests after these leaders were detained is a worrying sign. You've seen the governor pointing out the fact that Mehbooba Mufti did not get enough votes. People in her own constituency boycotted the elections. So that had that had already kind of weakened their legitimacy in Kashmir even before this thing. That is the one reason. But after this, I think it is only going to be more bad news. It is very important the kind of a plank they will adopt after coming out. Will they talk about restoring statehood, or will they talk about Article 370, bringing it back, if at all that is possible? But it definitely is an existential crisis for the mainstream parties, because it is them who kind of have been in alliance with this government, especially the Bharatiya Janata Party, at one point or the other, and it will be very difficult for them to go out to the people and convince them to kind of support and rally behind them when they themselves have been put under arrests and kind of disenfranchised this month. Ali Shirazi asks, there was a news report on posters of General Asif Ghafoor appearing. Is that true? Any sign of that in Srinagar? So honestly, I've not read the news report of Mr. Ghafoor's posters appearing in Srinagar, but if I see them, I'll definitely will be reporting that as well. Mohit, single how people are expressing their emotions as they have been suppressed their fundamental rights for the last 1 month. Um, so it's kind of very difficult for people. It is also not just the communications blackout, but the fact that that the whole exercise of restricting people and making them wait in lines and barricades, this has been taking a toll. I'd be lying if I'd say that people are not affected. People are deeply affected by this thing. To be honest, I personally think that more than Article 370, abrogation of the 370, it is what happened after the article was abrogated, the way that the restrictions were imposed and the communications blackout. I think that has definitely taken a toll on people, and there is also this anticipation of uh, what will happen next. Basically, that is something that only people of Kashmir are feeling, because they are the first stakeholders in this conflict, and they are not sure how the future is going to shape up. Whether the situation will be normal, whether insurgency will increase or decrease, or whether there will be this theory of a so these are questions that are complete. These are topics that are being discussed and in every nook and corner of Kashmir right now. But there is definitely this unrest that exists, and I don't think that will be easy to kind of leave behind. Amit P asks, what is your opinion on Washington Post, NY Times, BBC, and other international media reports on status of Valley, where they're reflective of the actual situation on the ground. To be honest, there was a internet blackout, and a journalist gets access of only 5 to 10 minutes um, uh, in a day at the media center that has been set up by the state administration. So honestly, I've not been able to read all that. In fact, I've not been able to read a lot of my stories that I've been filing due to the internet blackout. But whatever I've been able to read from this, I would say that they have also, in a sense, reported what they have seen on the ground. I would not question a reporter on that, what he or she observes, because I have been doing the same. So, Akash Hassan asks, how difficult is it for journalists to report the ground situation? So, as I said, that it is extremely difficult, especially I think once I came out, I've been able to see some discussions on Twitter and social media scape that there was some gentleman who also said that journalists should have access to internet at least in 5 minutes a day, or should not call themselves journalists. I think for local journalists, it was extremely difficult in fact the first 2 weeks, because we were not issued curfew passes first, and when we were issued, they also were not as we were issued actually the what we call a general public pass, which is white colored. So the security forces also know that the white color pass is the weakest of all passes, the strongest being the red color, and then there is another color for the government employees and all. So there were many places where local journalists were arbitrarily stopped, and it depended on the negotiating skills. For example, some CRPF officials and SSB officials, we would just talk to them and say that we are also doing our job, how they are doing their job. So they would allow, but there were some barricades. Obviously, no barricade. I've often said this, that no barricade is representative, kind of represents every other barricade. Situation on each barricade that was put up in Srinagar is very different from the other. So I would say that for local journalists, it was very difficult, and for some it still is to access some areas. Hopefully that will change. Anand Singh says, are there more areas like Saura which are still off limit for security forces, as appearing on BBC? So I won't say Saura is off limits and I don't think BBC has reported that it's off limits. I think what the question Anand is asking about is this region called Achar, where kind of they have seized. There's a siege actually right now, and the people also have barricaded all the entry and exit points. It is very difficult for even an outsider who is from Kashmir to enter that area. But I think that is one of the areas that is, there are reports coming from the other areas, but I will only like to comment on that once I go and check myself. And I think this is going to be our last question from Anu Sharma. Is there any shortage of food supplies or other essential items due to current situation? I honestly, Anu, I can't speak on behalf of entire Kashmir, but if you remember that before the article was abrogated, there was a lot of talk about this deployment of troops, and also people had actually stocked up a lot of food. And right now, it is the same food which is getting used, the ration, if you mean. And, then again, in the evenings, once the restrictions were lifted, in the evenings, the shops are open, so people are able to buy the essentials. If by other essential items you mean the medicines, I think the pharmacy shops have been open from day one. They were always open. There are definitely some shortages of certain kind of medicines there, but mostly the pharmacy shops are operational, and it is about accessing those. If an individual wants to access and has no restrictions in his her or her area of living, then they can access the pharmacists. So I think that is all for today. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, and hopefully we'll have an interaction soon.